Welcome to the Screenplay Lab. I'm your host, Jeff Barker. I am a screenwriter, and on this podcast, we study and appreciate the standalone beauty of the screenplay as an independent literary piece, not just a blueprint for the film. We take one screenplay, we break it down, deconstruct it, find out what's unique about it, and discover what we can learn. And today we have another Oscar-nominated screenplay, The Substance by Coralie Fargeat. This is a psychological body horror film with extensive practical effects on the page, asking the reader to explore their own relationship with themes like aging and beauty and perfection. I have not yet seen this film, so this is the third week in a row where I dove into the screenplay before watching the film. And I'll just quickly say again, this is a good exercise because the movie that I see in my mind is exclusively from the text, not from the images on the screen. It's a good way to get a true understanding of what the author is trying to put forth. Coralie Fargeat, Academy Award nominee, director, and screenwriter now. She was born in Paris, studied at one of the most prestigious cinema schools in the world, La Famille. She lives in France primarily, but does come to the United States quite a bit, especially California, obviously. And she worked early on in television as a script supervisor and a first AD. She credits that experience to being able to be meticulous on set about her own movies. She has several early short films, and they have some of the same themes as this screenplay, with female empowerment, transformation, vengeance, identity. Her first feature film was in 2017. It's called Revenge, and it's about a woman's transformation after a brutal assault. And this launched her with a unique perspective and her very unique cinematic style. And this, her second film, The Substance, with 3 Academy Award nominations, is surely going to take her to the next level. She says she's highly influenced by the works of David Cronenberg. He's the guy that did The Fly. You can see some of that in the screenplay. And then also David Lynch with his ability to take something and shift it and make it seem dreamlike. And I imagine that that's what this film is like as well, because the screenplay is certainly that way. She pushes boundaries. She likes to make her readers and her viewers uncomfortable and question societal norms, and that's what this screenplay does. She does seem to be a force, and after this screenplay and this film, I'm sure she'll have many more opportunities. So how was this film developed? Well, she started writing it at a coffee shop in Silver Lake in Los Angeles in 2017. She crafted it, evolved it over the next 2 years. Then she got her own production company involved, which is Blacksmith. And then she eventually partnered with Working Title Films and A Good Story. That's pretty good. Once Demi Moore was attached, it was full speed ahead on this project. Later, they added Margaret Qualley, Dennis Quaid, and they shot in France over 108 days with an $18 million budget. It's a lot of days, but it's because of all the practical effects in this screenplay. Just last week, as I mentioned, the 3 Academy Award nominations: Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Original Screenplay. All right, here we go. The Substance by Coralie Fargeat. We always start with the logline. Here is the official logline of the screenplay. A fading celebrity takes a black market drug, a cell-replacing substance, that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself. And as you know, I like to always take a crack at it, see what I can come up with. Mine is, desperate to reclaim her youth and stardom, a fading celebrity turns to an underground substance that creates a better version of herself, but as her flawless double thrives, she soon discovers that perfection comes at a horrifying cost. That's okay. A little long. All right, what does the title mean? I like to do this. I started this last week and I thought, wow, that was pretty cool. So I wanted to dig deep into this title, The Substance, to see what I could come up with. Obviously, The Substance, a black market drug, both a miracle and a curse. But if we go a step deeper, the substance is the essence of a person, like your substance, my substance, the essence, the identity, the soul, the being. And then perhaps a third layer deep, the substance, something to be consumed, like something we would take into ourselves. People can be treated as a commodity and then dehumanized, consumed. So to me, those are the 3 meanings to the title, The Substance. There are several beautiful passages in this screenplay. I want to share my favorite, and that is how she so cleverly connects I always want to say first scene, but it's really the second scene because the first scene is the eggs, but it's so early. It's the first real scene in the movie connects it to the end scene of the movie, and that is the Hollywood star. If you've seen the movie, I'm sure it's in there. You know what I'm talking about. I'd be shocked if they cut that. And if you've read the screenplay, you certainly know what I'm talking about. The first shot is that overhead top shot where people are going in and out, and it's almost like time lapse. Things happen, seasons. And then at the end of the movie, they return to this shot, and you get to see something very clever. Well, let's talk about it. The first is, and again, this is some of her long, drawn-out, blocky, slow writing. This scene is almost 3 pages, 2, 3, and 4 in the screenplay. But I'll just summarize it. So first there is the sidewalk is destroyed, and then the Hollywood star is being constructed. It's for Elizabeth Sparkle, our main character. This is how we're introduced to her. There's a buzz of excitement. We have the official ceremony, and Elizabeth molds her hands into the cement as they do, and she is applauded by the fans. She's adored. She's loved. The press is there. Flash, 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 asking questions. Then time goes by because we can't stop time. And no one pays any attention. She is not relevant. The star is just there. People are walking on it. Nobody's paying any attention to it. Finally, a greasy hamburger bun flops down onto the star. The guy at least tries to pick it up, and he wipes. There's ketchup smeared onto the star, and he uses the burger wrapper to try to wipe the ketchup off, but he just makes it worse. So that's the first shot, significant shot of the screenplay. Then on page 144, 145, which is the very end of the screenplay, cut to the exact same shot. And now we have Musho Monster Eliza Sue. Remember this character. So it's basically, our main character is now mush and a piece of gooey flesh. And she is crawling along the cement and using all of her might to get to the star, and finally does. And she's so satisfied. And then she morphs into Puddle of Monster Eliza Sue. So from mush to a puddle. And then she diminishes again into a bloody stain. And look at that. The bloody stain wasn't ketchup after all. It was our main character at the end of the story. It looks just like the ketchup, I imagine. Day breaks, and the street cleaner comes by and wipes it clean. And that is significant because it shows, what do we all mean anyway? We're all forgotten, even the main character. One of the things that she goes out of her way to show us is direction on the page. She is the director of this film, but even if you're not the director and you're a spec screenwriter or you're on assignment to write a screenplay, don't be afraid to put some direction in there. She puts a lot of direction, and it's why I can see this movie so clearly in my mind. The first one I want to talk about is her use of POV shots from inside objects. She does this 9 times in the screenplay, where she puts the camera inside an object and the characters outside looking through the object. The first one I want to show you is on page 20, inside a trash can. It says, low angle shot from inside the trash can, which opens again, revealing Elizabeth's face framed by the black can. So very specific about what this shot is supposed to look like. Look at page 38, inside the fridge. This is the view from inside the fridge. It says, the door opens, revealing the punctured syringe and 5 vials. Sue's hand grabs it. Like I said, she does this 9 times. 3 times she puts us inside a trash can. 3 times she puts us inside the refrigerator. 2 times we're inside a box. And 1 time we're inside a locker. Coralie loves the bathroom. And what I mean by that is she loves scenes in the bathroom. In this screenplay, anyway. 43 times there's a scene inside a bathroom. Think about that. 43 scenes inside a bathroom, and not always in the same bathroom. There is a main bathroom in the screenplay, but there are many other bathrooms. I wondered why she did this. I think it is because of the bathroom being a private place, a place to transform, a place to handle your own personal business, where you can be separate from the world, but always be intruded on at any moment. I like it. It's a very interesting way to use a scene. Now, if you've seen this movie or you've read the screenplay, you may think, well, it's just part of the story. Of course they're in the bathroom. But I promise you, she could have written this many different ways. Out of the 43 bathroom scenes, maybe she had to do 10 of them. But we're in the bathroom a lot. I think it works. She loves the top shot. She uses perspective quite a bit. And what better perspective shot is there than the overhead top shot looking straight down? Objects come in and out of frame rather than the frame always moving. Great use of cinematography. And I can see it on the page. I haven't even seen it in the movie yet. I know it's going to be great. 9 times in the screenplay, she calls for that shot. Maybe she used it more, maybe less, but that's what's in the screenplay. One I want to show you is on page 144. It says here, static high angle top shots. This is how she does it. She gets very specific about describing the shot, but she calls for shots in the screenplay 119 times. So it's very direction on the page. Again, she is the director. Very specific shots. She talks about wide shots, static shots, POV shots, like we talked about, tight shots, close shots, low angle shots, medium shots. But reading the screenplay, I have to tell you, it really helps you see the movie in your mind. She has some creative shots in here as well. Look at page 57. I really like this one. It reads, we film up her entire leg. The camera turns around her thigh and does an extreme close-up on the black and shiny material as she slips on the ultra-tight suit, as if we are an integral part of the leather. That's pretty cool. While we're here, though, look at that scene heading. It says interior bedroom, hallway, bathroom, secret room, end of day. 4 locations in that scene heading. Even certain cameras are called for in the script. For example, on page 22, it says, we follow Elizabeth from behind with a handheld camera as she walks down the street. So you can imagine 20 different screenwriters would have written that action line 20 different ways. She may be the only one that would tell you which camera is going to be used in that action line. I'm going to pause here for just a second and say, if you're enjoying this so far, I am so very grateful. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, review, leave a comment, all that fun stuff. And you can watch this on YouTube if you're not watching it right now. If you are, you can listen to it on the podcast, audio, wherever you get your podcast. Also, you can go to my Substack where I do an in-depth article about this screenplay with even more detail than we're talking about today. Please visit that and subscribe. Thanks for giving me a second. Now back to the program.
Thank you for watching my dad's podcast.
Let's talk about the writing, the words on the page. I wanted to first point out just how dense this text is. Look, for example, on page 127, a tremendous amount of words on the page here. Thick paragraphs, lots of black. And this is not just the most thick page in the screenplay. It is like this throughout. Here's another example. Look at page 41 to give you an idea. A lot of words, a lot of information. She's not afraid to really get in there and describe something in a very thorough way. There's also very little dialogue actually relative to the action lines. And if you had a screenplay, if I told you there's a screenplay with really thick text, so it's not like a lot of spaces, and there was very little dialogue, you would think, okay, well, this probably is an average size screenplay, maybe a little smaller. No, this is 145 pages. It's on the larger end of screenplays. There's one section of text going from page 21 to page 34. It's 13 pages with no dialogue, just thick text going through there. 219 scenes in this screenplay. And she has sort of like a speed dial as she writes. She can turn it up, turn it down. There are these slow, flowing, descriptive, thick text, and then it gets quick. In fact, she gets so quick at times that she doesn't even use verbs. She just names things, and it is very effective. Look at page 7-8, and I highlighted some of this here. A white sink, the neon lights, the sound of a toilet, greasy fingers, thick, sweaty nape of a neck. So these are all objects. No action verbs there, but you know exactly what she's describing. And she doesn't do it all the time, but she'll get into these passages where she'll do it and she'll name 3 or 4 things. And then she'll go down a little bit more. She'll do 3 or 4 more. It gives you a flavor of what's going on. It sets the scene. Here's another example on page 72. Her dazzling smile, her firm breast, her slender thighs, her suggestive hip, her abs tightening. Well, that's kind of a verb. Her gnarled, deformed fingers. So she gave all those objects possession, her possession. And look at page 66. The withered skin, the protruding and swollen veins, the deformed knuckles, the stranded empty vial, the insistent ringing tone, her bright, dazzling smile. So she'll have some paragraphs where she describes her smile with 4 sentences. And then she'll have this phrase, her bright, dazzling smile. So I believe that this is a creative choice, that she is deciding the pace that she wants the reader to have. Does she want to slow the reader down and build anticipation? Does she want to speed things up and let you know this is a moment to be anxious? She's very good at that. Speaking of time, she was in such a hurry on page 33, she didn't put in interior, exterior. She put IE. I'm joking here, but this is the only time in the screenplay that this happens where it just says IE instead of interior, exterior. She goes with blazing speed at times. From page 48 to 50, 3 pages, there are 15 scenes. So again, it goes very fast, it goes very slow. But when it's in the mode of not going fast, she is not one to be concerned about the economy of words, the scarcity of words. She will say things 2, 3, 4 times to get a point across. This is her creative style. Let's look at page 20. Elizabeth turns around and hurls the globe with all her strength against the wall. Bam! The globe smashes and shatters into pieces against the frame poster, splattering everything in the process. So here we have bam, smash, shatter, splatter. 4 words to describe basically what happened. Another example is on 48. We see where it says, she leans against the door frame and looks down at Elizabeth's slumped body on the tiles. A long moment as she looks down at the limp Matrix. Matrix is who Elizabeth is. Sprawled on the ground with like a rag doll. Crunch. I love those sound words. She crushes the can in one sharp gesture and starts looking around as if in search of something. So we have 3 times in this paragraph where she says looks. To further illustrate this point, look at page 27. This is a scene where Elizabeth is observing herself and Sue, and there are 45 lines here describing what's going on. It's beautiful. I like it. I'm not a critic. I think it's great. But I do know that a lot of screenwriters would have written this scene with the same information in 4 or 5 lines. So that's just to show you how she's not concerned with the economy of words. Coralie does something in her screenplays that you've probably been taught not to do, and she does it quite a bit, and that is she does point out the obvious at times. We call it hand-holding for the reader. For example, on page 42, the 2 egg yolks sizzling next to one another feel like a strange reminder. So she wants to make sure that the reader doesn't miss the point that these 2 eggs represent something. Again, on page 45, this is when Harvey is talking to Elizabeth, and it says, his excess of enthusiasm stresses the fact that he wants to get rid of her as soon as possible. So again, she wants to make sure that you don't miss the fact that he wants to get rid of her. How about on 59? This is when Sue is bringing Troy home, and it says, they stumble and laugh. We quickly understand that they're both completely drunk. So no clues, no figuring out on our own. We're told exactly what's going on. One more example. Page 13, this is the male nurse, and he's got the mask on and the blue eyes. You may remember if you've read the screenplay. Still focused on her spine, he says, no, it's perfect. You're a good candidate, catching himself. I mean, you're good to go. So think about this what you will, but it is what it is, and it's in there quite a bit. Then there are other times where we completely have to figure everything out on our own. One of the most fascinating things about this screenplay is the world that she creates. It's modern adjacent. It's a lot like our world and our time, but it's off a little bit. It's not exactly the same. This creates sort of an eerie feeling where you're just sort of off tilter a little bit. You know, things aren't right, but they're close enough. Creates a lot of unease. It's a place where they use USB drives, but at the same time, doctors still use paper charts and beepers. It's a place where there are flat screen TVs, but everybody wants to watch jazzercising fitness shows, which pretty much don't exist now. The sexualization of women in this screenplay is extreme. It's sexually charged, obviously obsessed with the female figure. However, this is a point that the author is trying to make. Again, I'm not sure that a male could have written this screenplay and gotten away with some of the things, but this is her MO. She tries to challenge you, challenge your thinking about yourself and about society. And so this is what she's doing. This is a technique. She's pushing buttons. Look at page 54. And this is just one page in the screenplay, but it is like this a lot in there. On 54, we see asses starting to sway, asses moving to the beat, thin waists and pelvises, high-cut leotards, perfectly waxed groins underneath, firm and bouncy bosoms. So that's just a sampling of what's in here, and I imagine this translates onto the screen as well. This is a story about Elizabeth and Sue, although Sue is actually Elizabeth, and they are internalizing everything, working out their own internal struggle, their own conflict, their own demons. And so in this case, the side characters serve the purpose of coming in, serving the main characters, and then going away. I don't feel like I know the side characters at all, really, but I think this was on purpose. This is very focused. This is a very narrow alley for the characters to be able to process ideas, work through ideas. I don't know, maybe on the screen it's different. Maybe it plays differently, but on the page, the side characters are very minimal. There's quite a bit of imagery and symbolism in the screenplay. One that jumps out at me is the motorcycle. We first see this when Elizabeth nearly dies because she is sucking the perfusion bag dry, and she sees this motorcycle. Look at this on page 41. It says, "The small dot grows bigger and bigger until it takes the shape of a ghostly motorcycle, like a photographic negative, which hurtles straight toward the camera lens. Only audible sound is the heartbeat growing louder, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. The motorcycle hurtles directly at the camera at full speed, ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. And it's on the verge of exploding against the screen, and it stops." So again, very wordy, but very good writing. That's when we first see the motorcycle. But then there are other instances, like the guy that Sue brings back to the house. He has a motorcycle helmet, so it's inferred that they showed up on a motorcycle. And the motorcycle helmet has a reflection of them having sex. Later, Elizabeth runs into the guy, Troy, and they have a confrontation, and she looks at her haggard face in the motorcycle helmet. And again, later on, when Elizabeth is on the verge of dying, the same motorcycle scene, as I mentioned before, happens, except now the motorcycle does explode through the screen. The motorcycle in this case signifies escape, danger, autonomy. So it's a very good use of symbolism. Another one worth mentioning is the spider. The first mention of it in the screenplay is when Elizabeth is taking out her back sutures and dropping them into the sink, and we're told that the sutures look like spider legs. You wouldn't think much of that, except then you start to see more and more spider symbolism in the screenplay. The palm trees that are always present outside Elizabeth's window, we start to see that they look like spiders in the evening. I bet that's a really cool shot in the movie, the way it's described in the screenplay. On page 135, we see here Sue is just a mess. She's trying to get on stage for the New Year's Eve show. She's determined, even though body parts are falling off. And she starts to have macular degeneration in the center of her eye where she can't see, and it's in the shape of a spider. In this case, the spider represents being trapped, being in a situation that you can't get out of. You know, when you're trapped in a spider web, you walked into that spider web. It's partly your fault, but now you're stuck. There are others too about being trapped. There's a fly that gets trapped in a wine glass early on in the screenplay. So a lot of imagery, a lot of symbolism. If you're a screenwriter that likes to use a beat to indicate that your characters are taking a pause or that the scene is taking a pause in a new direction, you are really going to appreciate Mrs. Fargeat and put her up as one of your heroes. She loves using a beat. 102 times in the screenplay she uses it. It shows up so frequently. Look at page 103. In a 3/8 of a page, we have 3 beats you can see here. I like her use of going to black. Apparently the screen goes completely black, at least in the screenplay. Sometimes it fades to black, sometimes it flashes to black. 28 times she does this in the screenplay, and it's very effective as far as one chapter ending, another beginning, one situation ending. I like it. Also, too, not only that, black is used throughout the screenplay to describe outfits that people are wearing, shadows, and I know that this is done on purpose. This is a metaphor for deception, loss of identity, loss of time, perhaps even foreshadowing for the fate that she's going to have at the end of the screenplay. I appreciate this. One more piece of beautiful writing on page 52. It says, inside the empty living room, Elizabeth's large framed poster still hangs on the wall and is now facing Sue's publicity billboard in a bizarre face-off. It's outside the window. Almost as if the two versions of herself were staring at each other like a static paper version of a cowboy standoff. Elizabeth's glowing eyes facing Sue's sparkling eyes. That's good writing. There is a quote page like you would see in a novel. You don't see this all the time in screenplays, I'd say rarely. And she uses 2 quotes here. One is from a Greek philosopher and the other a Belgian pop singer. And this song shows up in the screenplay a couple of times. Formatting and mechanics, sort of how you put the story together on the page, because every screenplay, when you open it up and you start reading it, you have to allow the author to teach you how to read their individual screenplay. So you'll see ... SC on the top of every page in the screenplay. Some people may be questioning what that is. It's something they used to see all the time. It means that the scene from the previous page is continuing. So it'd be ... SC 121. It just means that what you're seeing at the top of the page is the continuation of scene 121. Also, because of that, the page numbers are flipped to the bottom of the page. Most of the time we see the page numbers in the top right. This time, and this one got me a few times, I had to go looking for the page number. Another interesting thing, mechanics here that Fargeat uses is the use of bold text. More than I've seen in a script, maybe ever. It's all over the page. There's almost as much bold text as non-bold text. If we take a look at page 109, you can see the dialogue boxes here with bold text, bolding what the character is saying. But if you look at page 102, she continues to use bold for dialogue, but in this case, the dialogue is not in classic middle of the page dialogue boxes, just put to the side. This happens a lot in the screenplay, and it really sort of messed with me because I was trying to figure out, why is this happening? Why are some of the dialogue in the center of the page in the more traditional way, and then there's all this dialogue that's just crammed to the left of the page here, some of it bold, some of it not. I was thinking, is this a dream? Is this, are we about to have a Fight Club situation at the end of the screenplay? So it was interesting to see the choices here. If you've picked up this screenplay now, and a lot of people have since we're in award season, probably the thing that jumps out at you the most is right here. These black text boxes. Look at page 18 here. You see how she highlighted, "You are one," and also, "You can't escape from yourself." Big text with a black highlight. Don't see that every day. Using it here for important information, but if you look on page 145, this is an example of how it's used to introduce a character. Anytime an important character is brought into the story, their name is highlighted in this way. This is the very end of the screenplay, and the last character introduced is Puddle of Monstro Eliza Sue. And so there you go, introducing that character. And then the end in bold highlight. And then on page 17, we see the substance bolded and highlighted in that way. Sort of like what you would see. If you ever did see this in a different screenplay, it would be a title card on end of page 1, maybe middle of page 2. But this is on page 17. This is not a title card. This is an introduction to the substance, like it's a character in the story. She went to this several times. In fact, 22 times in the screenplay, she used this technique. She also uses different size text quite a bit to make a point. Some things are really big, some things are small. Let's take a look at some of those examples. On page 71, we see text actually grow from one size to the other. This is when Elizabeth is, I believe she's vacuuming and she's frustrated. Sue, the person that she's sharing a existence with, is on her show. And so she's upset and the music is growing and growing. But it also shrinks. I really liked this one on page 7. Man, this was really cool. If you see here, it says his voice drifts away as the bathroom door slowly closes with the automatic closing system. And then Harvey is talking as he's going away. It's so hurry up. She actually used text getting smaller to depict that this person's walking away and the volume of their voice is getting smaller. I thought that was really interesting. Another example on 92, this is when Harvey is eating the shrimp and it's just really gross on the page. You can see the text is all over the place. Small, medium, big, trying to make a visual point about what's going on. And one more quick example on page 120, 121. I just wanted to show you how she also uses the large text in dialogue. So even with the traditional dialogue in the middle of the page, she's not afraid to get really big with it. She uses this as a visual medium to try to control the pace and the tempo and the emotion of the story. Another mechanical element to talk about is the use of red text. And I wish I could deliver some mind-blowing explanation of what this is. I tried, trust me, and I can't. It happens 9 times in the screenplay. At first, I thought perhaps it was a riddle because there'd be certain words or phrases that were read. And to me, anyway, it didn't seem like they were significant enough to be a different color from the other words on the page. So I thought it was some sort of riddle. Let's look at this together. First, page 19, this is the first time it shows up. Elizabeth stands. Okay, I thought, well, that's a good one to start with if we're trying to put together some secret message or riddle. Then page 22, waste paper basket. Okay, maybe I could see. Maybe that's something. The next one's on page 32. It says, a beat. And her eyes fall upon the waste paper basket with the newspaper thrown by Elizabeth before. Okay, that doesn't really tie in with the other stuff, but that is a significant piece of text. I can see why that's read. But look below it. The next red one is omit scene 30. So that obviously is not a secret message. That's a scene that was taken out. And just to beat this idea to death, let's look at page 33. And in red, it says establishing shot. Not significant. So maybe it is used for effect, but I think it means really nothing. It may have meant something at one point and things got moved and edited, but there are 9 times in the screenplay where there's red text. There's also blue text one time on page 88, and the blue text is add it. That's it, add it. The only time we see that in the whole screenplay. So same things. Others may say this is stylistic. It's a decision to try to give some information. I don't see it that way. I'd like to ask her and see what she says about it. The same thing with the use of yellow highlights, not the black highlights, but yellow like we would normally see. The only time it happens in the screenplay is once on page 5, and it is the camera stops rolling and the soundstage lights fade. Now, I'll give it to you. That is a significant piece of text, but it is unusual to me that it's the only one in the whole screenplay, and this is a long screenplay. Also in the category of things I don't think were done for creative stylistic purposes, but maybe they were. Page 134, when you look at the scene heading, one of the words is in French. This is the only time that this happens in the whole screenplay. Jour is French. Oh, I hope I said that right. I'm going to sound silly. However you say it, it is French for day. And there it is. The only time we see it in the screenplay. Another thing to point out, which is interesting because you don't normally see it on a screenplay, but it's part of the real world of making a film, is look at page 10. We see here, it says check clearance. If you don't know, that means we need somebody to make sure that Toothbright is not an actual toothpaste, that there isn't some toothpaste somewhere in the world named Toothbright and we're going to get sued. This is a very important part of making a film. It happens all the time. There's continuity coordinators that are responsible for this, as well as line producers and a whole bunch of other people. And I really thought it was pretty cool to see this in the screenplay. Now we'll talk about the narrative elements of the screenplay. The first always is tone, and I have 3 tones I've identified here. The first is visceral and unsettling. The grotesque consequences here of scientific overreach drench this screenplay with the ick. Loss of the self and desperation lead to an unsettling obsession. The other one is societal satire, a sharp and biting critique of society's obsession with youth, beauty, perfection, sexualization, and consumer culture. That's definitely a tone. And then it also has the tone of a classic tragic drama. At its core, this is a story about a woman who wants to be loved. A deeply emotional look at a flawed human, but not in the ways that she believes that she's flawed. The emotional weight of her downfall is expected, but is tragic. Some of our themes: cost of perfection, loss of identity, obsession with youth and beauty. Cost of obsession is how far will someone go to be happy with themselves? No matter how far you go, is it even possible? Chasing an unattainable version of yourself, will it lead to self-destruction? It did in this case. Loss of identity: by creating a better version of herself, Elizabeth begins to realize that she's no longer necessary. If we lose our identity, then who are we? Obsession with youth and beauty, obviously. A commentary on aging, especially in the entertainment and consumer industries. And this aligns with our fear in life of being replaced, being obsolete, being irrelevant. And it reflects a real world issue, especially for women where value and opportunity often diminish with age. And I believe this is a core theme that runs through all of her writing. When we look at conflict, we'll start with the internal conflict. There's an existential crisis here for Elizabeth. She's trying to preserve herself, but by doing so, she's making herself obsolete. The question here is, if the world only wants the younger version of yourself, do you even exist because you're always getting older? And then there's love versus unconditional love. She believes being younger and more beautiful will make people love her again. And if people only love me when I'm young, did they ever really love me at all? When we look at the external conflicts, we have Elizabeth versus Sue, even though they're the same person. Sue eventually becomes independent, even though she is still Elizabeth. And Sue wants to replace Elizabeth entirely. And this results in a deadly battle to see who gets to exist. And that is woman versus woman. Another conflict is Elizabeth and Sue versus the substance. The miracle drug soon proves to be a curse, and they both lose autonomy over their own bodies. That is woman versus science. And Elizabeth and Sue versus power. Everyone reinforces this toxic and abusive system. They become desperate and paranoid. Those who adore them now turn to betray them. So this is woman versus society. And another conflict, I try to do 3, but there's 4 really good ones. Elizabeth and Sue versus time. No matter what they do, they cannot outrun time, both in the sense of the 7-day rotation that they try to manipulate and also aging as a whole. You can't outrun it. And the substance is like a fake cheat code at one point, but we all know cheat codes don't work. Woman versus fate. Let's look at the structure, and in this case, the screenplay fits nicely into the classic 5-act structure. Act 1, the setup, you have this aging, iconic celebrity struggling with irrelevance. The inciting incident is she starts to hear whispers of the black market drug that brings this physical perfection, but she is skeptical and she rejects it. The Act 1 turning point, she is humiliated and decides to take the drug, resulting in an intoxicating transformation. Then we move to Act 2, that's the experimentation, fun and games. The younger self reclaims her fame. People love her. She feels like she can control the substance and everything's going to be great. We should just end the screenplay there. Not going to happen. Rising conflict. She can't remember what her younger self did all the time, so things start to get fuzzy, and then the body horror elements start to creep in. Act 3 midpoint, the unraveling. She tries to stop, but her younger self won't let her because she's having too much fun. The younger self is resistant to her control, and the horror intensifies with these grotesque deformations. Then to the escalation, the real identity is starting to fade away. People only want the younger version of Elizabeth, which is Sue, and she begins to completely replace her. Act 4 is losing the battle. All is lost. The younger self is fully autonomous now. Her body is breaking apart. The gore is gross. She has no control. And then the final confrontation of Act 4 is the showdown between the younger self and the original Elizabeth, and the body horror reaches this peak. Act 5 is the resolution. There's a very dark ending here where the younger self replaces her, and no one remembers that the original self existed, but it is a tragic victory because she rallies and destroys the younger self, permanently disfigured, and the industry discards her again, and then all goes downhill until she ends up a smudge of tissue on the Hollywood star. And that is The Substance by Coralie Fargeat. And what makes this screenplay so unique is that it pushes the boundaries of this psychological body horror, especially in the mainstream setting. I mean, this is a horror movie. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. But it is being viewed by people who don't consume horror because it is nominated for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, which we love. She also is persistent and consistent with her themes and her tone throughout. That is what makes this screenplay so beautiful. And how she links the beginning to the ending with this one long scene. I really love that. And her use of bold and oversized fonts and black highlights and descriptions without action verbs makes this writing unique. It leaves a thumbprint so that the next time I read a screenplay, I will know for sure if she wrote it. And I think that as a writer, you can't ask for anything better than that. And now I'm excited to go watch this film and see how it compares to the screenplay. That's always so much fun. And I want to thank you for being with me for this podcast. Please like, subscribe, all that stuff. Also, if you want a deeper dive, please go see my Substack and subscribe to that. You'll get it right there in your email. Also, you can find me on jeff-barker.com. That's where you'll find what I'm up to. Plus, I'm on all the socials, easy to find. Please share me with your screenwriting friends and your filmmaking friends, and you can watch this on YouTube if you're listening to it, and vice versa. You can listen to it on all the podcast channels. And I need to tell you, next week we're going to get together and go over another Oscar-nominated screenplay. This time it is A Real Pain by Jesse Eisenberg. Hearing so much about this film and the screenplay, and I admire him so much as a writer and an actor, so I can't wait to do that with you next week. See me there on the Screenplay Lab.
Thank you for watching my dad's podcast.